Wow, guys, it's Sunday evening again, Monday tomorrow. I am tired, and I don't know why I'm so tired. It was quite a hectic weekend, of course, but generally speaking, I think for me it was also the series coming to an end. All of those things as well. I think that's also has a lot to do with it. Let me just change this view so that you guys can. Oh, there we go. It's a lot better. A nice black trim to it. Yeah, so I'm really tired. I mean, I need some time to just maybe take a break because when this series happening, there's so much stuff to do. The editing, the reports, making sure people do get the things on time, making sure that we can do the podcast shows, the daily shows. I mean, our teachers must be feeling it the same as me. So, I mean, we had a meeting the other day and, we were chatting about different ways to go forward. But I mean, I just thought today, I think for the podcast show, it's a nice way for us just to sit back and relax and just have a conversation and talk about that. How are you guys feeling? I mean, Ravi, how are you doing? How was the week for you? I mean, obviously, seeing South Africa win a game is obviously excellent from your part and from our part. Win the series, actually.
Yeah, it is an unusual feeling. I think on a personal level, it's been a very busy couple of weeks as well, personal studies and work-wise, what have you. So that's why you haven't really seen much of me on the last couple of shows. But it's really good to see South Africa back to winning ways, as it were. And I'm glad we got to see a nice little cameo innings from Timber Bavuma, a nice way to end off the series as well. It sort of silenced a few critics, and maybe not all of them. But yeah, good way to start the new week, I guess.
And I think this, Ditya, this will be probably something that people talk about for the ages, all those bio bubbles, bio fatigue, and then still being able to perform. I mean, I doubt people will feel that their rest levels are up to scratch, like, I mean, generally speaking, being in a bio bubble, some guys might be worse off than others, I wonder how fatigued they actually are, and to be able to perform even though you have a lack of sleep. I mean, I've been on plenty of shows with you guys. I mean, when we used to do the Legends with Ravi on a Wednesday evening, which I really would love to do again in the near future. But some nights before, I didn't sleep at all, and then I knew that I needed to be up till late to do a Legends, and I don't know how you get the things out of you, because when you're doing something every day, it becomes a pattern, and even when you're fatigued and you're tired, you have to push through. So I think these guys must feel the same. Like Werner said in the comment section, imagine how the guys must feel, because I mean, bubble to bubble, fatigue, and all of those things, lack of sleep, all of this, and then he's still having to go out and perform. I think Temba must have had a very restless night because the pressure was mounting on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I empathize with you, man. It's hard to put in the hours day after day with not a lot of sleep. But since we talk about cricket, I'm reminded of a number of players over the years who haven't slept the whole night but have produced masterclass innings. Sachin Tendulkar was one of them. He was known to sleepwalk, actually, and he would somehow, while sleepwalking, he'd end up finding his bat, and then he'd be tapping the floor of his room. And back in those days, when players didn't have single rooms, they used to have roommates. It has freaked out a number of players. And if you really want to ask a player for stories, you ask Sanjay Manjrekar, because Sachin and him have roomed together for quite a while. And Sanjay Manjrekar has woken up on a number of occasions, only to see Sachin not conscious, but he's still walking around with his bat and practicing his backlift and so on. But since we're a South African channel, I feel compelled to tell the story of Faf du Plessis, who, on the night of his Test debut, interestingly, he was a replacement player for JP Duminy, because JP Duminy had injured his ankle a day or two before that Test match in Adelaide. It was the second Test match of the series.
Yes.
and Faf was obviously next in line. So the night before the test match, I think he ended up waking up till he woke up at, I think, 2:33 in the morning, because he simply couldn't sleep, and he was visualizing the game the next day, and he felt like it was a long day ahead. So uh, I hope South Africa fails. And as it happened, Michael Clark won the toss and decided to bat. Of course, there were long
Wow.
days in the field for South Africa, because he ended up scoring a magnificent double century. But then when South Africa did get that turn to bat, and Faf du Plessis was preparing to go down to the field, his boot came off, and on both sides he had he had the Adelaide crowd just cursing him constantly, and he was probably that one player who got as close to getting timed out, because this rule probably gets overlooked a lot. Where if you take more than a certain amount of time, I think it's 2 or 3 minutes after a batsman has been dismissed, you can be dismissed via timed out. So Faf had that risk, and so he just scrambled and got his boot back together, having the Adelaide crowd curse him on both sides, and he went in there. And of course, we know what happened there. He scored 78 in the first
Yeah.
innings and his historic 110 in the second. So, yeah. Interesting.
Incredible stories. Doesn't this remind you? And thank you again, Werner, for reminding us. But doesn't this remind you of a special night for Herschel Gibbs as well? The night before, drinking and stuff like that. I mean, were you at that game, Ravi? Did you get to see it live, or did you see it on TV?
No, I saw it on TV. I was very much based in Cape Town at that point in time. But
Of course, yes.
I remember we actually had a indoor cricket match, and we stopped the match in the middle, because we actually started the game because we were like, okay, 400 odd runs, no way South Africa is going to make the score. Let's just play some cricket and have some fun at home. Then somebody called us to say, listen, Smith and Gibbs, they're doing something magical here. You guys need to stop what you're doing. Whatever it is you're doing, get to your nearest TV. Because that time you couldn't stream games on the phone and stuff like that, like you can do with ease right now. So we had to stop what we were doing, find the nearest bar, watch the game. And what we saw was something of a fairy tale. And the stories that came after that, like Herschel the night before, having one too many pints. And so much so the Australian cohorts, his opponents, if you will, kind of encouraged Herschel, maybe he should go cool off at this point. Maybe he should go back to the hotel room. And he didn't listen to anyone. So he just did his own thing. I think he had some company later that evening, whatever the case is. I think it's all declared in his book, To the Point, doing some free promo there for Hirsch. But I think you'll have to look at those particular details, those cricket fanatics that are watching right now, just to see what exactly unfolded. But basically, Herschel was unbelievably hungover. In South Africa, we coined the term babalas. Babalas means hangover. And that was what Herschel indicated when they won the match. I have a moose of babalas. It's amazing that he managed to belt out a 175.
Yeah. He had one too many drinks, ended up with 170. That's what has actually happened. But what do you think it is that people can still perform?
Maybe one more drink, you would have got a 200.
Yeah. So what do you think it is about people that can perform even though you might not think that? Like everybody knows, like athletes are given the advice: go out, have a nice rest the night before, prepare yourself. But I mean, you gave an example, Aditya, of someone that one of the best players of all time actually struggling to sleep, and then going out and being able to, and that was hassled him his whole career, but yet he was still became one of the greatest run scorers of all time. I mean, Herschel Gibbs, one of the most exciting batsmen ever, being able to do that. Do you think it's the amount of practice or their body just taking over? How is that possible even?
I'd put it down to adrenaline, because there is something about the intensity of professional sport that just motivates you to perform at that level. And we know our friend Hirsch is one for the big stage. So if you're talking about the 4-3-8 game, then we're talking about a series decider. And interestingly, in that particular game, the night before, a bunch of the Australians, as Ravi mentioned, had seen him go a bit overboard with the alcohol. And when he came on to bat, he had taken a couple of tablets to get rid of his hangover. So when he came into bat, Michael Hussey was chirping him from the slips, almost questioning whether he could see the ball or not. But then, as Herschel very eloquently mentioned in his book and future interviews, I suppose, he was seeing the ball like a football. And that that obviously inspired one of the greatest ODI innings of all time. But your question reminds me of something that we'd written in one of our magazine issues on mental health, where the advice given to anyone in a situation where they need to extract a level of performance is that one of the worst things you can tell someone is to calm down and just relax, because that's not going to bring out the intensity that is required to succeed on the international stage. Instead, it's important to motivate players to get to a point where they're almost aroused enough to be able to stay in that zone for a long period of time and deliver what's required.
And Ravi will tell you, you don't tell your wife or you don't tell your girlfriend or your spouse to relax.
That's the word aroused.
What? Yeah, he did use it, but it's a good adjective for that particular.
It is. I've never used it in the cricketing context, admittedly, but wow.
But it was mentioned. It was mentioned in that magazine article.
Yeah,
I can't remember who wrote it, but that was the exact word.
Ravi, not reading our magazine issues. It's probably Ravi that wrote the article. He's just, he wasn't talking about cricket, baby.
Yeah. After one too many drinks, that's what happens,
I mean, Ravi, you must have lots of. I mean, you have lots of stories.
It's crazy how many stories are out there. Well, I think with last year's the Legends series, it gave us an opportunity to see the stuff or to hear the stories which wouldn't make the front page news, as it were. And I recall various tours over the years of India and Pakistan in the early 90s, where they would actually go to the local pubs and fraternities. I think nowadays it's a very strict code of conduct, and people are following strict diets and there's nutrition plans, so people don't really indulge. There's no such thing so much as a beer after the match, or indulging on one or two engagement parties afterwards. Those days have been sort of marginalized, if you will. But back in the day, it was pretty much a free for all. I'd remember guys like Brian McMillan getting a Man of the Match award, and he walks in with the biggest castle lager I've ever seen in my life, and he's accepting the award. These days, it's a big no-no. It's somewhat of a faux pas now when it comes to television broadcasters and what the brand of beer you can hold in your hand. If you can hold a beer in your hand, but back in the day, it was a free for all. You could do pretty much what you want. So there was a bit of it's kind of like the Wild West back in the day. Now there's some strict protocols and procedures to follow.
I mean, you mentioned one Legends with Neil McKenzie talking about the superstition. Just tell the fans about what we learned about that episode.
Guys, you need to actually watch very closely. If you watch some of the old footage, Neil Mack, before he would leave the pavilion, would touch his pads a number of times, would touch his gloves, would do a couple stretches, he would reciprocate that before he gets to the actual middle. But what you guys don't know, what I didn't even know about Neil Mack, because Nick Portas was actually on the show and he filled us in on what his exact ritual was, because he batted basically after him in the batting order, so he could actually verify this. But he had to open up all the toilet doors, the doors that actually, there's like obviously the, how do I put this, the, what's it?
Stalls,
The structures. So they had to open up all the doors, all the seats had to be up. Before he had to come out to bat, he had to touch his shoes a couple of times, he had to touch his pads a number of times. So he was absolutely superstitious. I think it's it's unbelievable number of superstitions this man actually had, and it's good to see that he had a fruitful career in spite of his many challenges. I know he was in and out of the side as well, and I know at some point he actually opened the batting for South Africa. But yeah, there's an incredible number of superstitions this man had in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. I mean, cricketers have weird habits and stuff like that. Like I asked Subhay Ramza once if he had any. And he said no, he just cleans his. And I asked him like, what does he do with his bat, man? Because his bat is always clean. And like, how does he clean his bat? And he's like, no, he uses nail polish remover to remove the marks on his bat. So that's something that is quite interesting that some cricketers do. Werner, let's look at one of the comments. Werner saying that I remember A.B. de Villiers saying that he slept badly and had a stomach problem the night before the record-breaking pink day. When on the day he kept saying that Miller should go in before him at 3. I've heard stories like this before as well. Did you read anything on this, Aditya, or pick up anything on this? I think I saw a documentary about this before the West Indies series, and they were speaking about it, saying that that A.B. de Villiers was someone that he actually didn't want to go in at the time, and he asked Miller to go ahead of him, and then they just told him he must go in, and look what happened.
Yeah, so there are actually 2 innings there within that 2-month period that were record breaking for maybe de Villiers. So one was obviously the pink day game when the South Africa were playing against the West Indies at the Wanderers, and Hashim Amla had done brilliantly well. I think Riley Rousseau had played a fantastic innings, and when A.B. de Villiers went in, he had spoken to Russell Domingo, the coach, to ask whether it's best for Miller to go in, but Domingo insisted that A.B. de Villiers must go in, and he went. And obviously, we know what happened there. He started with a boundary and ended up making a 31-ball 100, which was insane. And obviously, his family was there too, so that was cherry on the cake. But if I'm not mistaken, A.B. de Villiers had slept badly and had issues with stomach the night before the West Indies game in Sydney during the World Cup, and that's when he felt terrible going into the field. But when he did get there, he was in a different zone altogether. Ended up scoring 162 of 66. So can I stand to be corrected? But I think that might have been what happened when he was sick before the World Cup game against the West Indies, and not the pink ball game. But Werner, you can correct me, man. You know best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to hear these type of mysteries and stories and stuff like that, on things that you don't, behind the scenes things that you don't really know. I mean, I can even mention some things about the ball tampering saga that people didn't actually mention or didn't actually speak about. I mean, we all saw the documentary on SuperSport about what actually happened when the ball tampering, and everybody spoke about the tunnel situation and what happened with the tunnel, because that was aired on SuperSport. That video went viral, that particular, and there was a spoof video made by SuperSport, on that tunnel scuffle that happened between the two of them. But the stories that came out of that particular tour, I don't believe that was the reason. That alone was the whole reason for them feeling the pressure. I think David Warner was the key to this whole collapse of events. For the entire, I think I wouldn't blame the whole series on him, because he wasn't the only person involved, but I think the pressure on him alone what he was getting, the pressure he was getting, unraveled the entire series. Now, there was a particular moment that I would really say tip the scales for that. And yeah, it's got to do a lot with the fact that after the scuffle happened, he was obviously having a go at the likes of Quinton de Kock and Aiden Markram on the field before they had the scuffle. And we know what Quinton said to David Warner, or we allegedly said to David Warner, or something was said to David Warner that he got upset. That got leaked to the public somehow, the words. And that might not have been what Quinton said, but people went with a narrative that it was about David's wife at the time, currently his wife. And a period in her life where she was a little bit naughty with a particular famous cricketer. Rugby player, not cricketer, with a famous rugby player. And the word got out to the entire fans. Now, after we lost that particular match, something happened in PE as well between Kagiso Rabada and Steve Smith when they brushed arms, basically. They called it a shoulder barge, but it was just like a brush of shoulders. And KG got banned because of it. Now, this scuffle, the hearing was in PE when this happened, and he got banned. But the pressure was on the Aussies at that particular time. Now, they made things worse when a group of fans, about 200 of them, they created masks with Sonny Bill Williams' face on it. And they came to the stadium in a mass, sat by the boundary and basically followed David Warner everywhere he went, like along the boundary. And they'd stand there and they would chant and they would sing. It got so hectic that they actually, 200 people, they actually cut a lot of them out, kicked them out of the stadium. So obviously they are screaming comments at him about this whole situation because the video was leaked online and people was talking about that incident with over and over again, and it tipped the scales with regards to that. I mean, I did a particular with the owner of the masks, with the guy that created it. I put it online. It went viral. It ended up going on Channel 9 in Australia. It became a big thing all over the world. People started talking about this particular incident. And then, obviously, his wife heard about it. And now you obviously bringing up old dirt again. And I think that affected Dave Warner emotionally and mentally and everything, because now everybody knew about it. And I think that was the tipping point of the entire series, because Warner was then in a state of anger at the South African public. His wife was angry with the public. She was talking about how disgraceful the South African cricket fans are for doing something like this and bringing things out back from the past. All of those things were happening. So the pressure, and then they lost the game, even though they got KG banned as well. So now the pressure is on hectically. And then they went to Newlands, and then Morne Moko was bowling the way he was bowling. And then wickets fell, and they were under the pump, and that was the tipping. That everything collapsed from there. And we know they ball tampered, etc. And from there onwards, it was crazy. I'll never forget that tour was one of the hardest tours of my career, because halfway through the tour, my editor was left. So I was on my own, and then I had to do multiple things at once. Like I had to do my job and basically majority of the editor's job as well, to try and get those stories out straight from Cape Town, because this whole ball tampering thing is happening and it's blowing up all over the world. Straight from Cape Town, I flew to Joburg. As I got off the plane, I had to rush to the hotel because James Sutherland was giving a speech about this whole thing. So I think his name is James Sutherland, eh? So he was live there. I had to get out my equipment, set it up, and then live do that particular press conference. I got right up until the boundary to get videos of them walking off the bus and stuff, and then I noticed, hey, wait, those guys aren't there. Like, so what was the whole thing going to be about? And it blew up. You know how that blew up. So crazy, man. It's crazy stories behind the scenes that you don't hear about. That wasn't spoken about. That was the crazy thing about it for me, is that particular incident with the whole marks and everything that happened, that wasn't even mentioned. And I think that the video that interview going online and going on Channel 9 and that all happening put a massive highlight on it all over the year and in Australia. So the talk was all about that. The focus was all on that. And while that's all happening, Australia's getting a complete beating. So it's like it was a combination of all of those things that has raveled up and has turned into a complete nightmare for the Aussie team. But how wonderful it is to beat the Aussies. I always love beating the Aussies, South Africa, from a South African perspective. It is great. I mean, Ravi, I'm sure you're wearing a Springbok jersey. I'm sure you can tell us rugby stories that shocked you. You know, we all watched that Invictus, Nelson Mandela coming onto the field, obviously shaking Pinar's hand, the captain, the what that meant for South African public. I mean, are there any stories in the rugby fraternity that maybe you heard, or that is like a mystery or a tale of success?
Well, look, tell you guys were talking about food poisoning and having stomach cramps or what have you. Apparently, there were 5 or 6 New Zealand rugby players in the final of the 1995 Rugby World Cup that had supposed food poisoning, and that apparently enabled South Africa to beat them. But the way I see it, they were only 3 points short, you know, so maybe they should have stayed away from the starters. They might have won the World Cup on that day. But be that as it may, rugby-wise, there have been plenty of legendary stories in South Africa. 1995 was a magical time. Never seen, you know, I think the only thing I could think that could be relatable in a cricketing context would be when India finally won the Cricket World Cup in 2011. I would imagine the celebrations being somewhat similar, if not slightly more so, than what was the case in 95 when we won the Rugby World Cup. It was incredible. The cars were flashing lights, people running up and down the streets. There were flags everywhere. It was crazy, and I didn't realize how big this thing was. I wasn't that big into rugby back then, but I remember it distinctly when Joel hit that drop goal. You could actually hear the households and neighborhoods, everybody screaming. And I had no idea. I was 12 years old at the time. I didn't know a single thing about rugby, right? So when that happened, like, I was thinking, okay, it's just another game. We got one over the All Blacks. They were the favorites, great. But then when you go outside, it's a completely different situation. Everyone's running up and down, going mad. Absolutely crazy. And the only thing I could think of relating to that could be when India won it in 2011, the Cricket World Cup at least, in 2011. I don't know, Aditya, you want to share what happened in 2011 maybe?
Well, 2011 was obviously a landmark year in a lot of ways. Personally, I was in the US, and I was at Emory University to my undergrad degree. But the way we followed games that, you know, in the morning and to continue all the way till like noon. So it started. So actually, I think the madness really started with the Pakistan game. The fact that India and Pakistan were playing in the semi-finals. You know, there were stories of old women, like 60, 70-year-old women, who were willing to sell their kidneys in order to get a ticket for that game in Mohali. And and I was in the US watching. So I'd obviously skipped class that morning because I think it was on a Wednesday or something like that. And we were creating this massive ruckus at 5 o'clock in the morning in a residence hall where virtually every single Indian and Pakistani student at the university was watching the game with us. And we'd got our Indian flags out. Some of them had got their Pakistani flags out, and it was almost as close as a stadium sort of environment. But then when India won the World Cup, after that, it was insane. I can't begin to describe the emotion. My chats with people in Bombay who had experienced the mayhem. I told Khalid on one of our previous shows that during a Q&A actually, that Sachin Tendulkar's wife and kids were driving into the stadium, and I think there were so many fans around that the pressure of it all ended up cracking the windscreen of their car. So yeah, some of these experiences are just unbelievable. They're very hard to convey that emotion, but it's
Yeah. I mean, I know Ravi gets that attention every time he walks
I would
outside the
love,
store.
I would love for us to experience that. Hey, what's that?
I said, even you get that attention every time you walk out your door. I know that.
Sorry. Oh, good Lord, no, my windows are very much intact. They'll just be like, "God, hi," as people walk past. But I'm just interested because I remember the World Cup final quite fondly because I remember there was a huge uproar when Sangakkara got the toss wrong, or he did something, and I can't remember what happened. I think he hesitated or something to that effect. But you just recall what exactly happened there? Because he made a complete botch up of the toss, apparently.
So what happened, as far as I remember, was that there was the crowd was so loud that MS Dhoni couldn't tell what Sangakkara had called for at the toss. And so I think they flipped the coin. Sangakkara said something. Dhoni said, "Wait, listen, let's do this again because I don't know what's going on. I can't hear anything." And so they decided to do it again. And that's when MS Dhoni won the toss and decided to field first. So yeah, I think that's what happened. But I know a bunch of Sri Lankan fans have their resentment, for that moment, because we don't know what the outcome of that first toss was, but it is often assumed that if Sri Lanka had won that toss and batted second, they probably would have won the World Cup. So yeah, it's hard to tell.
Oh yeah, totally. So but I have a feeling Sangakkara heard it. He just freaked at the last second. But that's just my 5 cents. Khalid, wouldn't it be awesome if we? I mean, what do you think would be? I'm putting you on the spot there, Khalid. But what do you think would be the entire Republic of South Africa, the entire population? What would our reaction be if we actually pull the big one and actually win the Cricket World Cup, either T20 or World Cup? What do you think the vibe is going to be like?
I think it will be just as big as when we won the first Rugby World Cup. I think it's like, for me, I think it will be complete mayhem in the streets. I think people will, cricket fans are a lot different they behave differently in stadiums to the way rugby fans behave. I think by the time you get to the second innings, majority of fans are already sloshed. So they just in their own mind, because it's like 8 hours you're at the stadium. Some people only come maybe the second half, but the second innings, but majority of the people, they are there from the morning, drinking from the morning right until the evening. So they will be mental by the time they get there. So, but they also, I feel, because cricket is the different type of game that you cheer for. Rugby, like, you cheer every hit, you cheer every scrum that you win, you cheer every maul that takes place. You cheer every try, you cheer every goal kick. Every single thing about rugby is just a hype. Whereas cricket, it's gradual. So, but if we win the Cricket World Cup, I think it will be a proper celebration. I think every single person in the country will be talking about it. Every news person will be talking about it. I think that these cricketers that are part of that World Cup winning side are going to be legends for the rest of their lives and celebrities instantly. It will boost cricket and the exposure cricket gets in general, and the fame that comes with being part of cricket. It will boost us from here till there. everything will increase. More doors will open. More sponsors will get involved. Everything will just get better for South Africa. Yeah, I mean, there's certain things, for example, those are type of moments that can change an entirety of a sport, and the fortunes that you get. United winning the FA Cup for the first time, it took them to a whole new heights of getting that on a roll of winning. You just need one trophy or one piece of success to just elevate you to the next level.
The 1983 World Cup win for India did that. It did exactly that. It was considered to be the most important post-independence development in Indian
Oh.
history, and
Say.
and after Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Sachin Tendulkar is celebrated as one of the most important post-independence figures. So these cricketers are not ordinary individuals, and their statistics are not going to define them. But they represent an emotion in this country. And I remember Peter Roebuck writing quite profoundly that time stops for Sachin Tendulkar. There are trains that are scheduled to go at a certain time, but they won't leave if Sachin's batting in the 90s. That is a ridiculous amount of pressure to endure for an individual, but it also represents what he meant to the country. And every single player who played his final test said that they have never seen that sort of atmosphere ever before. It was comparable to the 2011 World Cup final.
And you know what, we have all of these legends in South African cricket that we look up to. Jacques Kallis, A.B. de Villiers, Graham Smith, so many, Herschel Gibbs, Makai Ntini. These names can just rattle off your tongue, the amount of legends that we have. Hashim Amla, it's just Dale Steyn, all of them. None of them have won a World Cup. Imagine a bunch of newcomers in South Africa that people never backed, that people thought that were, because currently that's how it is. Every time South Africa fields a team now, people are calling them chokers. People are calling them, no, they'll never win. They're average. They're this, they're that, and the other. Imagine this bunch of cricketers win the World Cup. Imagine Temba Bavuma lifting a Cricket World Cup. What that will do for the nation and for cricket in South Africa. Ravi. I mean, wow.
That will be incredible. And that's exactly, I remember when, coming back to rugby, be it temporarily, when they lost to New Zealand in the very first game, immediately there was a backlash, people calling for Kolisi's resignation, saying the team is ill-equipped, Rassie doesn't know what he's doing, a whole number of things. And look how quickly they bounced back. But coming back to the cricketing side of things, I want to point everyone's attention out to 1996. Sri Lanka won that World Cup, right? And they were perpetually the whipping boys. If you look back to the 75, 79, early 80s, they were the whipping boys. They weren't anywhere near the final 8, let alone the contender for the tournament. And they did the impossible in 1986 and actually beat Australia in the final. That is 25 years since the inception of the World Cup. Sorry, 21 years since the inception of the World Cup. So the World Cup has been around since 1975. South Africa, to be fair to them, 1992 was their very first stint at the tournament, right? So it's been less than 30-odd years. We're somewhat a young nation by definition when it comes to international cricket, let alone to World Cup tournaments. You know, the fact that we came to the semi-final in the very first World Cup speaks volumes. And we've always been the guys that are on the cusp of getting it, but not quite good enough in the end. And I think it's just a matter of time. It's a waiting game. And I think it's almost serendipitous that it's cricket that we're talking about here, because cricket is a game of patience. You have to wait. We have to wait. I think it's just about being patient, the fans investing in their belief that one day South Africa could very well win the tournament. it's been proven we've come very close. We've been knocking on the door. Lots of people don't reference us. We are former Champions Trophy champs. In fact, we were the very first winners of the ICJ Champions Trophy. Lots of people don't remember that, but we did it. I'm just saying that it's a waiting game. It's a matter of patience. It's a matter of time. And unfortunately, all of these other developments, from a governmental, from a financial point of view, and definitely from a leadership standpoint, things have just happened in between us getting to that eventual milestone. But that's the thing. It's an eventual milestone. South Africa will get there. Just about backing them 100%, believing they could eventually do it. I have reservations about the team right now. Doesn't mean that they can't do the impossible. There are teams that had fewer resources, lesser talented players than the South African team right now, and they pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
So anything can happen. It's a game of fine margins, especially when it comes to T20 cricket.
Yeah. And you know what?
Have to wait and see. But I tell you, that party is going to be the greatest party I'll ever have gone through my life.
Most likely, yes. And you know, I don't want to work myself up here and get all excited, but teams win World Cups. And South Africa will need to be a team, a unit. This South African setup will have to be a team, a unit for them to go ahead. Everybody needs to contribute. Everybody needs to step up. Not just one person, not just two people. Everybody, every single player needs to step up as a unit, as a team, to have a chance. And that might be the one thing that can tip us into glory perhaps, because I think that everybody in this particular team look a lot more unified as a unit when it comes to that. They know that they need to work extra hard, or they need to play a certain way. You don't have a lot of individuals in this team that are necessarily guys that you see as individual world-class players, but there are a lot of good players together that can do it together as a unit, and that might be the key to winning our first World Cup. A team performance as a whole, everybody putting up their hand and creating a good performance. You ultimately, in cricket, you just need everybody to be able to perform. If we can have like our top run scorers all averaging around the same amount of runs, scoring the same amount of runs together, and then one or two that are really outstanding, could be on the road to a World Cup win in the future. And that's just me being optimistic 100%. See, I've also got a little bit of Tsepo's energy still within me from this last tour. All of that energy is contagious. So, yeah, guys, thanks a lot for the show. I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. We will be back again tomorrow with another daily show, as per usual schedule. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We have a little break from cricket for now, I think, in a way, for South Africa, until the Sri Lanka series. I don't know when they're going to announce the dates for that one exactly, or the schedule, show us the full schedule so we can bring it to you. We will bring it to you immediately on the daily show when it is 100% announced and all of those things. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Smash that like button, share this with all your friends and family, and let us know if you would like to hear some interesting podcast shows like this in the future as well, where we just have a conversation amongst all of us. You know, sometimes things will come up about us, about the other passions that we have, myself and Ravi and Aditya is a newborn Man United fan, but myself and Ravi are massive United fans as well. So we'll do a lot of different things. Put suggestions in the comment section after this particular video as well, of type of shows you'd like to see, what you'd like us to discuss. That we would like to hear everything and your feedback as well. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another daily show. Take care, everybody, and enjoy your week.